Like All right, members, let's get started. This is the House Select Committee on Rules, or the House Standing Committee on Rules. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Representatives Camper, Darby, Faison, Farmer, Grills, Hicks, Jernigan, Johnson, Shaw, Whitson, Chairman Lamberth. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And members, before we begin, just a little housekeeping here. Do I have a motion that the rules adopted today by this committee be submitted to the House? Thank you. As the report of the Select Committee on Rules in order to amend the permanent rules of the order for the House of Representatives 113th General Assembly. I have heard a motion and a second on that. Members, again, that just combines anything we passed today into one package that I would present on the floor. That's the way we've always done this in the past. Any discussion on that item? Seeing none, will be voting on it. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Moving forward. All right, members, the way we're going to take this up today is years ago I chaired a committee, and this is how I always kind of organize the calendar. So the ranking member of the Republican majority is the Republican whip, who is here, Representative Garrett. He'll be taking it up first. The ranking member of the Democratic minority is Leader Karen Camper. Hers will be taken up next. The Democratic Caucus Chairman, Mr. John Ray Clemens, Representative John Ray Clemens, will be taken up next. We have then the most senior member left would be Representative Todd, also a chairman. We have Representative Ritchie, Representative Jones, and Representative Capley. Unfortunately, Representative Capley is a freshman Republican and will be last today. So Representative Capley, if you want to go grab lunch or something or a late breakfast, feel free. It'll be a little bit, okay? I'll see you in the back of the room. With that, we'll be taking up Representative Garrett's submission. Each member, if you can, several of these involve several rules changes. And so, Representative Garrett, I know you've submitted several. If you've got 5 minutes to describe all of these, and then we will take questions. I know you have a couple of amendments that were submitted. By the way, members, you will have a copy before you of the 113th General Assembly rules that we are already under. We are under these rules right now. For those that are following online, this is available on the website. If you were following, you're already on that website. And then the packet spread before you, members, includes all of these submissions, including any amendments that have been submitted timely. With that, Representative Garrett, you have 5 minutes to describe what rules changes you have proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me. Thank you. A motion and a second, which on each one of these, we will need a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, I do have several changes that I'll try to go through real quick, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions as I get through with those. The first one is Rule 18 on duties of the members toward the Speaker. At the moment, the way it works, the Speaker, when someone raises their hand or recognizes those that want to be recognized on the floor, he has to do those in order they raise their hands. We're just making that where he recognizes anyone that wants to be recognized. There's no specific order. He can make the order at his discretion. That is the amendment to Rule 18. Rule 19, the transgression of a rules by a member. If a member is called out of order, that member, any member, will get several warnings by our presiding officer. In this case, it would be our Speaker. On the first out of order that a member transgresses Rule 19, the vote will go to the House. If the House votes that particular member out of order, they will not be able to discuss anything on that particular subject. If, again, in the same legislative day, a member is out of order for a second time, they get 5 minutes typically to speak on our potential issue before the House floor at that time. If they're ruled out of order again for a second time, that 5-minute time frame will be reduced to 2 minutes. If they are again out of order for a third time, that third time you will lose the ability to speak on the floor for 2 legislative days. So those are the proposals for Rule 19 under transgression of rules of a member. Rule 22, we are amending to make where now no visitors can be 30 minutes before we start a session. Now this will apply to 30 minutes after. Also, Rule 35, I've proposed this amendment that no member at any time can enter any committee of the House with any type of visual aid or papers. Currently, that's just while we're in session. Now it means any time no member can enter the House, the committees, etc., with any type of paper or aid while they're a member of the General Assembly. Rule number 41, we are changing when you approach the dais, the clerk's desk, or the speaker's rostrum, you must have their permission to do so. So Rule 41 is when you approach the dais on the House floor or the speaker's rostrum. The next amendment amends Rule 21 as it amends Rule 49. So Rule 49 is incorporated in Rule 21. Rule 49 is now the duties of Committee on Calendar and Rules concerning the calendar. on a bill that we believe the sponsor or the majority leader or the minority leader believes needs more debate on the floor in consultation with the speaker, along with the minority leader, the majority leader, and the sponsor, there's going to be a new situation on the time limit for that bill. For instance, if the sponsor, the minority leader, or the majority leader, or the speaker wants a bill to be debated for an hour, that time will be divided between the minority party, divided between the majority party for 30 minutes. And who discusses and debates and is addressed on that particular bill for those 30 minutes is at the discretion of the minority leader and the discretion of the majority leader for their particular members that want to speak on the bill. So that's an amendment to Rule 21 and Rule 49. Under Rule 80, during welcoming and honoring, we are going to limit the ability for all members to welcome and honor for 1 minute. So that reduces welcoming and honoring to 1 minute for all members. Rule 83, when you present a bill in committee, like I'm doing today, you will be limited to present your bill to 5 minutes. And the purpose of this is to prepare yourself for when your particular piece of legislation gets to the floor, because you have 5 minutes to present it on the floor. So we are incorporating that same rule in committees, that you will have 5 minutes to present your particular piece of legislation in front of a committee. Rule 86 is being amended. That relates to points of order and parliamentary inquiries. There'll be a new procedure under this proposal for your consideration. If you have a parliamentary inquiry or a point of order, you will now approach, if you're from the minority party or if you're from the majority party, you will approach your leader from whichever party is making that particular motion. You will discuss that with them. You will approach the dais to our parliamentarian. You will state your parliamentary inquiry or your point of order. Then the parliamentarian will rule as necessary. He will repeat what the inquiry was or the point of order, and the ruling will be announced from his podium.
All right, Representative Garrett, thank you. That was literally almost exactly 5 minutes.
Boom.
So well done. I do have two amendments here that you have proposed. If you will, describe the first one, and then I'll ask for a motion and second on that. And again, members, these should be in your packets. It's amendments to what he just described. They're not in their packets. So if you can, go in pretty good length as to what this is then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Motion, is there a second? Motion is second. This is an amendment to your proposed Rule 19. Please describe that.
Yes, First Amendment is under Rule 19, where it's the second paragraph. We are literally removing 3 words from the very last paragraph. The 3 words that I'm removing for the committee's consideration is a third time. So we would strike those 3 words from that last paragraph under Rule 19. That's the First Amendment for the committee's consideration.
All right, and members, we're just going to get these in the posture that he wants, and then we're going to have plenty of questions for Representative Garrett, if that's okay. Okay, so we're voting on just the amendment to Rule 19, and then we're going to go into questions for Representative Garrett. These are technical in nature, at least what they were described to me. These are literally just clerical errors. So all in favor of the amendment that was described by the member on Rule 19, signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. All right, now I have another amendment here that, again, my understanding was clerical in nature on Rule 49. Motion and a second on the amendment. Describe that amendment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This second amendment is on Rule number 49. We're literally removing 1 word and adding 1 word as plural. So the second paragraph, about halfway down, we are removing the word particular in front of bill, and where it says or amendment, we are saying amendments plural. That's the only amendment to Rule 49 that I'm proposing at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Oh. Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was trying to find exactly where he was on that halfway down. Okay.
Representative Shaw.
Excuse me. Can you repeat that
Absolutely.
again?
Oh, hang on just a second here. Let's get in the right rhythm. I know we're all rusty. We've been out here for a few months.
Yeah.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rule 49,
Mhm.
second paragraph begins for the Committee on Calendar and Rules.
Right here.
About halfway down
Yeah,
that
okay. I see it.
paragraph, it says, when a time limit is established, the time shall be evenly, I'm in the wrong spot. Where it starts, the minority leader and the sponsor may establish a time limit on debate. I'm on that sentence. I'm removing the word particular in front of bill, and it has bill, resolution, or amendment. I am adding the word amendments instead of just the singular form of amendment, the
Okay.
plural form of
I got
amendments.
Representative Shaw, do you have any additional questions for the sponsor?
No, I got it now.
Any additional questions on this amendment? All right, question on the amendment. Amendment has been called. All in favor of the amendment as described by the sponsor on Rule 49 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. All right. Now, we're back on Representative Garrett's rule submission here as a package. What questions do we have on this package as a whole? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we go back to 18.
Sure.
Help me understand clearly. You're saying that when members have got their hands raised, the speaker will have the option to recognize whomever he wants to, even if my hand's up first.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
The only thing that's changing is that if you were the very first person to raise your hand, he doesn't have to recognize you first. It has nothing to do with whether or not he's going to recognize you. He can just establish the order because sometimes there's 5, 6, 7, or 8 people that raise their hand at the same time. He cannot determine who's first. So this is just a way to say whoever raises their hand to be recognized, the speaker or the presiding officer on the floor can say what the order is. Instead of someone raising their hand first, that being the first person, then therefore, whoever raises their hand second, whoever raises their hand third, sometimes that's indistinguishable.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it means even if I'm presenting the bill and I raise my hand to speak on it, to clarify something, the speaker can still recognize someone else before he recognizes me.
Representative Garrett.
I believe the practice that's been that I've been witness to is that if you are actually presenting a bill in the well and you turn and get the speaker's attention, he will recognize you at that time.
Representative Shaw.
That's been the practice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But will that change that if we vote this in? Would we be changing that? I understand that now, and I think that's my concern because sometimes the person that's presenting the legislation might need to clarify something to make sure that people understand what he or she is saying. I think I'm just concerned that somebody might get a little confused or jump to conclusion if we go the route you're presenting us to go.
Representative Shaw, if I may, I just checked with the parliamentarian, and this doesn't change that practice. This rule doesn't change anything as associated with a sponsor being recognized. It's just when a bill is first presented, everybody throws their hand up. It's just at that initial portion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, additional questions on any, doesn't have to just be on the first one, on any aspect of this? Nope, seeing, Leader Camper, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative on item 19, Rule 19. You're talking about a person being called out of order here. Are you talking about procedural order, decorum order? What are you talking about in particular? There are times when members say, I know I'm out of order, but, and they recognize someone in the audience. We got people here from Memphis. We want to welcome them here. Would this apply to that?
Representative Garrett.
I think the practice of the House is that it has not. When someone wants to recognize and gets the speaker's or the presiding officer's attention for the purposes of recognizing someone in the gallery, because maybe they weren't in there during welcoming and honoring, that practice will not discontinue, will not stop. What this does is when someone's actually on a bill or a motion and they're debating the bill, and we've seen, things that aren't necessarily on topic. And my understanding is from this is that there will be several warnings that'll be placed to that member, to all members, to make sure we maintain decorum in the House chamber. And those 3 steps is what it takes to make sure all members realize that if you continue to be out of order, there will be consequences for not staying on topic and maintaining decorum on the People's House.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think that that's clear in here, so I'd ask the parliamentarian to make sure that we're clear with respect to that, because part of that was part of the problem we experienced where people felt like if a person say, I know I'm out of order, then that's not considered out of order. So it didn't count against them. But if someone else was making a point that someone may not have agreed with, then they were called out of order. And so I think there needs to be clarity going into this session, the second half of our session on that, if we're going to change the rule. And I hear you, saying that it's been practiced. And if that's the case, we could leave the practice the way that it is without changing the rule. So I'm just concerned about people being confused on order because it's just, hey, you're out of order.
Mhm.
And the next thing you know, we end up in the whirlwind.
Leader Camper, I can go to the parliamentarian, but I would want to note that it says that the second time the member is out of order is when this in effect. And so the first time if somebody's just out of order, and I think basically everyone has probably done that at some juncture, and normally a member will recognize, look, Mr. Speaker, I know I'm out of order. I'm recognizing some in the gallery. They do it in about 10 seconds. And as Representative Garrett says, I mean, ordinarily, yes, they are out of order, but there's not necessarily been any negative effects to that because it's usually just a momentary type thing. But it does say in here that the second time that somebody is out of order, not just the first, but we can go out of session with the parliamentarian if we'd like to go deeper into this.
Mr. Chairman, before we hear, I understand your point. So in this case, I'm ruled out of order because I was courteous. I asked and everybody was good. It was something recognizing recognizing someone in the audience, but I'm out of order. So the second time could be what some believe is transgression. I'm talking about something that's the second time. So that's what I'm trying to get clarity on to make sure that members understand. If you raise your hand and say, yeah, I'm out of order because I'm speaking, I'm saying welcome to the Capitol, the second time it's going to take effect.
All right, Leader Camper, obviously I'm having a side conversation with the parliamentarian. We're going to go out of session and allow him to just address that point if you would so desire. All right, we're going to go and do that.
Desire.
All right, thank you, Leader Camper. We're out of session. Mr. Parliamentarian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the way the rule states now is that any member called to order, the member so called to order shall immediately sit down. So in that case, as long as the member says, okay, I'm out of order, and sits down and doesn't continue, then there's no appeal and no vote of the House. To trigger these other two instances would require an appeal in the House and the body to actually vote on whether or not they get to continue.
Leader Camper, do you have additional questions for the parliamentarian?
I understand your point. But my question is, although I sat down, is that considered the first offense, if you will, and then the second time, 2 hours into session, I say something that one believe is off course. Take a vote if that's out of order. That's the second time is what I'm trying to get at, because you could at the beginning of session say, I know I'm out of order, but recognize this person. Yes. And then they sit down and at the end of that, the speaker says, okay, out of order. Bam. He says it because they were out of procedural order. And then the second one, which in my mind, I don't think the first one is a problem. But what this is saying, that anytime there's a second one, in which that was the first, it's going to trigger this rule, is what I'm getting at. Even though the first one was just, I'm welcoming people to the House of Representatives.
And Leader Camper, I'm going to go to the parliamentarian, but I think the first part of the paragraph, the part we're amending, is actually what he's going to address in a moment that deals with a vote of the House. So if that member, just as you've described, doesn't appeal to the body for a vote, then it doesn't count as the first transgression. If on that first out of order, where you've admitted that you're out of order and you've said, look, I'm recognizing someone and I'm out of order, if you don't sit down and say, well, look, I don't want to be out of order, I'd like everybody to vote on that, then it would count as the first, my reading of it. But I'll go to the parliamentarian and see if I'm summarizing this properly. But if you were to force a vote on that very first one, which I can't imagine any of us that would, but still, if you wanted to, then yes, technically that would be the first transgression. And then another transgression would be a second one. But if it doesn't go to a vote, I don't think it counts as the first transgression. Mr. Parliamentarian, have I described that properly?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the vote is the trigger.
Leader Camper?
So if the first one's not voted on, it doesn't count.
Mr. Parliamentarian?
For the record now, if the first one, then there's no vote. Speaker just say, out of order, ma'am, sit down, go. That did not go to a vote, so it does not trigger this portion of the new rule.
Mr. Parliamentarian?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Okay.
Leader Camper, any additional questions while we're out of session for the parliamentarian? On this rule or really anything else?
No, Mr. Chair. There
All
is
right,
not.
so we're back in session.
Oh.
Whoop.
Well, maybe he can just.
Okay, I'm gonna go,
Yeah.
the sponsor had his hand up a moment
Right,
ago.
right,
So I'm
okay.
gonna go to Representative Garrett and then we'll go back and forth anything else. Representative Garrett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think our parliamentarian addressed it. I mean, you've got to be ruled out of order first, and for it to be even counted as the first one. And if the speaker or it's not voted upon, if you need to recognize someone that you may have missed during welcoming and honor, there's no one out of order. I could stand up probably all day long and say I'm out of order, but until I'm ruled out of order, I'm not out of order. And so that wouldn't apply in that particular circumstance. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Camper? Or excuse me, Leader Camper?
That's really just counter to what he just said, because at the end, the speaker said, out of order. He is ruled out of order at the end every single time. But what he just said, it had to go to a vote. So we need to be clear, because what you said just negated what he said.
Well, if I
And
may,
I'm
Leader
trying to
Camper-
get your
Yep.
intention of what you're doing here, really. Just
And
so
Representative Garrett, I'm going to go back to
Yeah,
you,
so
but
we can all
I guess you and I may have
understand.
heard different things there. I heard Representative Garrett say that if a member admits they're out of order themselves, it really doesn't count for anything. Doesn't matter if the member admits it or the speaker rules them out of order. If it doesn't go to a vote, it's not the first transgression.
That's not what he
Representative
said.
Garrett, to you to clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's exactly right. I mean, the person's got to be ruled out of order. And in here, we're putting that on the board. So it doesn't count first. If you even stand up and say, Mr. Speaker, I'm out of order, I would like to recognize such and such as in the gallery. That's you putting yourself out of order is not being out of order from the House perspective. That has to trigger a vote for you to be out of order before this rule would apply.
Sorry, I was smiling. We got some kids in the room and my kids are home today. They're not in school. So anytime I hear a child, it just makes me smile. So welcome to those children as well. They're absolutely welcome here. And I'm going to go to Representative Shaw. All right, go ahead.
You come to me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Shaw.
So if I say I'm out of order, I'm not technically out of order. If I get up and say, Mr. Speaker, I know I'm out of order, but I want to recognize Chairman Garrett. I'm really not technically out of order because I ruled myself out. The speaker has to rule me out for me to be out of order. Does that clarify this?
Representative Garrett.
Under the proposed rules, if you are ruled out of order, that has to come from the speaker. And then for that order by the speaker to be sustained will be a vote on the board.
Okay, I get it now. I just want to make sure I got it. Thank you. All right.
All right, additional questions on this particular rules proposal?
Mr. Chairman, you're talking about 18, right?
We're on anything.
Okay.
Any part of this package you'd like to have a question about? Leader Camper.
Okay, thank you. All right. Can we go to Rule 80, Mr. Sponsor?
Representative Garrett, Rule 80, that portion. And Leader Camper, you have a
wait, no,
specific
no,
question on
that's
that one or? Whoop, maybe not.
Well, I'll do that one. It was another one, but I'll do that one too. So your 1 minute rule goes to prayers and everything.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It does not apply to presentations, which would also be the pastor of the day. So it will not, if you have a presentation that a member has requested, that does not apply during that presentation time or when the pastor of the day is praying over the body. It only applies when the speaker recognizes those that are at their desks at the typical welcoming and honoring.
Leader Camper.
That's what I'm talking about. So I want to stand up and someone in the district has passed. I want a moment of silence, prayer. You're talking about limiting that portion to 1 minute.
Representative Garrett.
Yes, those type, everything that would fall under welcoming and honoring that we've done in the past would be limited to that 1 minute. And I
Leader-
don't believe I've known anything like what you referred to that have lasted more than 1 minute. But there'll be nothing preventing if you did have a 1 minute and you had other things that you wanted to welcome and honoring that you could be re-recognized by the speaker and you would have another minute to do that.
Leader Camper, anything additional?
Not on that one, Mrs.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes,
Leader Camper?
it was another one you had in here. I can't put my hands on it right now. That dealt with point of order.
I think that would be
Okay,
rule number
86.
86.
Okay, 86, okay.
All right. Question on 86. Go ahead, Leader Camper.
And generally, a member would raise their hand and ask for some clarity, point of order. And so what this looked like is doing to me is, I think it'll have an impact on people watching because we're streaming now and everybody is paying attention, want to know what's going on, understanding their state house. And there's generally a, transparency. So you want clarity on a rule or on a point or something like that. So now it looks like members are going to have to go to just me and majority leader, and then we go talk with the parliamentarian and ask the parliamentarian, and then I imagine everything else is still going on in the House. And while we're having a sidebar about a rule, about a point of order. So I'm trying to understand what we're getting at right here, because I think we're going to lose some transparency because the same confusion that the member have, the public may have. And so if we ask the question, then the public can get clarity as well versus just the 3 or 4 of us over here talking.
Leader Camper, if I may, and with all due respect to the sponsor of the bill, of the amendment here, the language on the page, and I'll go to him for explanation in a moment, reads a little different than what he described. And I know I limited him to 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And for Representative Garrett, I know that was a strain, but 5 minutes was all he had to describe. It's the member that stands up and makes a parliamentary inquiry or a point of order. And then they approach with us that'll be a Republican or a Democrat that will be making that point of order. They don't have to come to us first. They make their point of order. Then we all 3 go up to the parliamentarian. They explain what it is. Then the parliamentarian looks up that answer, just like in a courtroom where someone will approach the bench. 2 lawyers, different sides approach the bench. They tell the judge what the issue is. Then the parliamentarian, once we go back to our seats, and everything stops in the House, is my reading of this, and I'll go to the sponsor to make sure. And then when the parliamentarian has researched that, they will then announce both the question and the answer. Now, there may be some intermediary back and forth just to clarify what the question was from the member, and that's fine. That's why we're there. But the parliamentarian will then announce the exact question and the exact answer to that, and however long it takes to get that answer. And it may be momentarily or it may take a few moments, but everything else stops at the time. Representative Garrett, is that properly described? That's just my reading of the language on the page.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it is. And so what is being discussed, or what the question that triggers Rule 86 under a parliamentary inquiry or a point of order, once that question is communicated to the parliamentarian, that'll be announced and the ruling will be announced as well. So there'll be no issue of any type of not knowing what's going on, because that question that invokes this rule is obviously limited to a parliamentary inquiry or a point of order. That'll be announced at the dais of what that question was. And then the ruling will be made shortly after that.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the clarity you gave, because I did have something different and I was seeing something very different taking place. But I still think that discussion is good. And oftentimes when you're having these kinds of discussions, other members, think of other things, and the public, learn more, hear more, can express more. And I think it's just an openness to, our public life. So that's what's got me a little concerned about this. I understand your point that the 2 leaders and the sponsor, the person that's asking the question well, actually it's the 2 leaders and the parliamentarian that's having a conversation.
Mr. Leader, if I may know, it's the individual that has asked for the point of order or parliamentary inquiry will approach, and then we basically just go up there to listen and be there for that member, whatever way we need to be, and communicate that back to our caucuses if necessary. But the question and the answer will be announced publicly by the parliamentarian.
And oftentimes when it
Sorry, Leader Camper.
Yeah, thank you. Oftentimes, Mr. Chairman and parliamentarian sponsor, when that happens, it's a follow-on question. It's some, it's more clarity. It's a whole level of conversation. And so I'm trying to see now that if the person who asked the question needed the clarity, didn't necessarily understand or agree with what the parliamentarian's answer was, then in that case, they go back and say, well, this, that, or the other. I guess we still do that right there at the clerk's desk, or how do you see that taking place?
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In any sense that you would disagree with the ruling of the presiding chair, you could challenge the decision of the chair under the current rules.
And,
Leader Camper.
and that's my question. Then he challenges it right. I'm just trying to visualize. They go back to their desk, challenge it, come back. How are the people hearing this challenge? Or is he standing there at the dais saying to him, I don't agree? I mean, I'm just trying to see how this is going to play out, because oftentimes there's been disagreement about, yeah, I hear you, but. So they go back to their desk, they say, I understand your ruling, but this, that, the other, and they say what they think and what they believe, and then go back and we go and join and have another conversation. This is what I'm trying to get clarity in my mind, because the people watching, I think, gonna feel some kind of way, and there's just no transparency here. That's what it's gonna look like to me.
Leader Camper, I will say that obviously points of order and parliamentary inquiries are just that. They're not debatable. There is no back and forth, or there's not supposed to be. This will allow for some of that to occur right there in front of the clerk and in front of the parliamentarian. I have Representative Shaw, then I'll go back to Representative Garrett. Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So many moving parts when sessions going on. We all know that. And sometimes it's really hard to keep up. But I guess what I'm thinking of right here is that member who may get up and don't fully explain his or her legislation. And you need to understand something about it in order to make an honest vote on it. What do we do right then when that member says basically, and I've kind of seen this happen, this is all I'm saying about my legislation, you either voted up or voted down. I mean, I kind of like to get a feel from some of you, Mr. Chairman, or maybe the one who's presenting this particular change. What do we do right there?
So Representative Shaw, and this is only for points of order or parliamentary inquiries. So those are to the parliamentarian. There is no debate between the presenting sponsor on a bill on this. These would literally just be points of order or parliamentary inquiries that are for the parliamentarian. The member would be able to approach with the two leaders, ask that question. Parliamentarian would obviously be able to go back and forth for however long is necessary, find out exactly what it is they're really asking about, find the answer, and then announce both the question and the answer. Representative Shaw.
But it has nothing to do with presenting the legislation. Okay.
No, it has nothing to do with presenting the legislation at all. Yes, sir. Great question. Any additional questions on this rules proposal? We obviously have several others to get through today. Leader Camper? I'm not seeing additional hands. Leader Camper?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not trying to hog the mic. Sponsor number 41, no crowding about the clerk's desk or speaker's rostrum. You got to seek permission. So can you tell me how you see this process playing itself out? There are times when I may walk up there to ask the clerk a question about a resolution that I have, or as the leader, I'm going to try to get, an answer on something. And so I'm trying to see, who am I seeking this permission from? The speaker is presiding. I'm not sure I want to interrupt the speaker. He's in the middle of whatever he's doing. The clerk is, the parliamentarian is, trying to, make sure he's hearing everything. Who am I going to get this permission, and how does that work?
All right, Representative Garrett.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Typically, the way that I've always have done that, if I approach the clerk's desk or approach the speaker's desk, is I will get their actual attention. And they will either, nod to me to come up and do it like we've done in the past. The difference is technically now you don't have to do that. You don't have to let them know whether you make eye contact with them or walk up and got a question for you. And of course, if they answer the question, that's permission to approach the clerk's office with the parliamentarian, not the clerk's office, but the clerk's desk or the parliamentarian. And the same thing with the speaker, as he is above and you grab his attention. And if you want to approach him, then he will give you permission to do that, or whomever the presiding officer is on the House. So that's the functional way that I see that happening. And in fact, that's the way that I do it now, both with the parliamentarian and the clerk, and when I approach the speaker's rostrum.
All right, any additional questions on that one? Leader Camper.
Okay, just so people can know and members got to understand, I'm at my desk, I look up, like, hey, I need to, that's permission. Is that what you're saying? Is that how we're getting permission?
Leader, I will tell you, I've done this for years through multiple different speakers. When a speaker is presiding over the chamber, and I've actually seen you do it as well, I normally kind of walk up there close. I will look at the speaker, and I don't really go get into, what they're doing, because they're in the middle of presiding over the chamber. And I'll kind of wait till a speaker looks at me and goes, oh yeah, come on up. And then I'll kind of step up. I think that's been our common practice anyways. So I don't know that this changes much of what we're already doing, other than the fact that members should know that that is if nothing else, just a polite thing to do. Allow the presiding, as I'm presiding over this meeting right now, if somebody wanted to come up and talk to me, I would hope they would kind of be like, hey, do you mind? And see if I'm right in the middle of something. So that's all this does. But go ahead, Leader.
I understand your point, Mr. Chairman. But if it's not a problem, why do we need this rule? If the practice is that and it's working, I understand why we need this rule. And that's with respect to the speaker. But this is saying, even if I have a question for anyone on the dais, if I go to the clerk, I need to hey.
No, so and I apologize, on the actual package in front of you, it is a little hard to see the italicized part. We may should have needed to bold that. So the rule is bolded above. Members shall not crowd or stand about the clerk's desk is the current rule. And then from there forward is all that's being added. And so it does read like what you're asking about, but it's actually just the second sentence of that is being changed. Representative Garrett, am I correct on that?
You're correct. Thank you for that clarification.
Right, Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I get you on the no crowding about the clerk's desk. Been the rule forever. But it also says no member may approach the dais, which means sometimes I go to the dais because I need to talk to the clerk. But I'm going to have to get permission from the speaker now in order to do that. Is that what we're saying? Because it says you can't even do this without permission of the speaker or the presiding officer. So if I'm trying to see if there's a bill that's come over from the Senate, I might need to act on it right quick before we go home for the weekend. I need to get permission from the speaker to say, can I go talk to Tammy? And he says, yes. And then I go. This is what I'm really trying to understand this, because a lot of times members will come up to the dais to ask the clerk something, to sign onto a bill. It's right there. It's a lot of moving parts. So now 3 or 4 members are coming up because they're trying to track their bill. They're trying to do what it is they're trying to get a printed copy of something. They're trying to make sure that the speech that they got to give is just correct. The speaker is going to have to approve or give permission to be able to do that, is what this is actually saying.
Leader, it does not say that to
What
me,
does it say?
and I will go to the sponsor, but it very specifically says the dais or rostrum. Sponsor, could you define for us dais or rostrum, or what you're intending here? I took it as if you want to climb the stairs and actually go up where the speaker is presiding, but please describe to us what you intended.
That's exactly what the intention of the language is that when you approach where there's the speaker's dais where he stands, that's the portion that you've got to get permission to approach under this particular rule. So if you're having a communication with the clerk or the parliamentarian or anyone that's surrounding that area because you need something and maybe a message came over from the Senate, that's not going to be impeded by this particular rule.
Leader, does that clarify?
That clarifies. So it's only when you are really just trying to get to the speaker or the presiding, could be the speaker pro tem. Only when you're trying to get up that close and personal with the speaker about something, not any other ongoing business, the journal clerk, where I was seeing the entire thing as, okay, because you said dais or rostrum. I just thought it was 2 different things. Okay, all right.
All right, additional questions from anyone? Or are we ready to vote on this particular rule submission? Looks like we're ready. Oh, Leader, all right, now Leader Camper, I'm going to remind you, you have a rule submission up next, and
I
I'm going to
know,
encourage
I-
members to be just as inquisitive about
And,
yours.
and they can. I only
So,
got one or two, and
it-
I don't mind it. It's all
important.
good. I'm
It's
just
okay,
saying-
Leader, go ahead.
Look, Mr. Speaker.
What
Mr.
additional questions? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you so much. These people want to understand, and I'm trying to understand too. And he has an entire package.
Leader, I'm
so-
only having a little fun with you.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
okay, we're having fun. All right, so I get the piece on a particular. We got the prayer. I think it was one more. We got the 5 minutes. Okay. The points. I think I do have them all. But for you, Mr. Chairman, I think the question for me was oh no, it was the 5 minutes. The 5 minutes in the committee rooms as well. There, which rule is that? I'm sorry, I'm flipping back and forth. I thought I wrote it down. 83 it is. Yeah, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
Madam Leader, what would the
Okay.
question be on that one?
So we're changing the rules in the committee where a person or the sponsor is presenting their bill is limited to 5 minutes in explaining their bill. First, I'd like to know why we want to do this, because sometimes it takes a little time to really get it out, and especially on some of these comprehensive bills. And and the second part to that question is, would that apply to the amendments too? And the reason I'm asking this, Mr. Sponsor and members, is, I mean, sometimes we have 31-page amendments to, you got a capture bill and you got your amendment, which is about 31. It's very comprehensive. It's rewriting the whole code, or it's a piece of legislation, by the governor that is very, comprehensive, have several sections. And so now what we're saying is you're only going to get 5 minutes to explain it. Yes. Okay.
And I know you
And I'm
mentioned the
sorry.
question was me, Leader, but I
I
will
know.
say
I
that-
was asking him. I was asking him, but I'm just.
That's okay, Leader.
just- yeah,
Look, I
all right.
want to make sure we're clear on all this.
Okay.
So to the sponsor, Representative Garrett, I think it's a two-part question as to, is it limiting 5 minutes for the initial presentation, and does that include amendments? And then why are we doing this? So Leader, did I restate? Outstanding. So Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the 5 minute, the reason why the 5 is you have the same amount of time that you have to present the piece of legislation on the floor once it gets to that particular situation. We're preparing you and preparing the sponsors to not only be able to know the piece of legislation, is to make sure we have enough. The questions are unlimited, right? If you ask a question on the bill, it's not limiting any type of debate. It's not limiting any other thing. It's just saying, here's your particular piece of legislation. We are limiting you to 5 minutes to present it. And then it's, of course, the committee's piece of legislation that can take as much time on asking questions to the sponsor to make sure they know all those details. So if the sponsor gets to a point in there where they haven't been able to get to a 31-page amendment, there can be questions for the committee to make sure they address that would obviously have no time limit on the committee to debate the particulars of a bill and to debate any particular amendment that's presented on the bill. But it's just your initial presentation will be limited to those 5 minutes. And if you can present that bill in 5 minutes, which I believe all of us can if you know your particular piece of legislation, it does not limit whatsoever the committee's ability to debate that particular piece of legislation.
Thank you, Representative Garrett. Well said. Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things we pride ourselves in the body is that there's a great amount of respect for the committee process. So when you get to the floor, it's been properly vetted. So I understand the 5 minutes on the floor, but in the committee, some of these comprehensive bills need more than 5 minutes to explain. And that's for the people watching, as well as some of the members who may not get it, in the 5 minutes. And I know you said they can ask questions, but the member is basically trying to understand what it is that the member is trying to do. And so the question may not be asked because it's on page 30 and you haven't gotten to it. You need a little time to digest what you're hearing and what you're scanning and reading. So I think we should, just not limit ourselves in the committee process because that is where most of the work is done. And so I don't see a reason for this. I really don't see a reason for changing this. And, but that's a question for you. And I just don't understand why we want to do it. And the other thing, and I hear you, but you said the committee is their bill and the committee can ask as many questions and until somebody said previous question. And you don't have the votes. And so not only did we limit the amount of time it can be explained to the member who has to vote on it, but it's also limited amount of time for the public who's streaming now. So many people have tuned in and learning so much. And I think it's so educational for people to learn that. We're limiting all of that. And I get it on the floor, 5 minutes, because, but in the committee, that's the real work of this body. And I can't agree with you on this one. I can agree with you on several of them, but this one especially because we pride ourselves in this entire committee process. So I just really want to know why you wanted to do it. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, so when the amendment comes, you get 5 minutes for that too, right? If you need it. Not, a lot of them is just one-liners and stuff like that.
Yeah, and Madam Leader, I may be able to take care of that pretty easy.
Okay.
It doesn't affect amendments at all. This
Okay.
is just for the initial presentation. Correct,
Okay.
sponsor?
Yes, Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Garrett.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Seeing no additional questions at this time, we'll be voting on this rules proposal as amended. There were 2 amendments that were adopted onto this rules proposal by Representative Garrett. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. All right. Thank you, Representative Garrett. I appreciate it. And for our other presenters, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the committee.
Leader Camper, you are next with your 2 submissions on the proposals. Would you like to go ahead and just present from your chair there? If you can, just give us in less than 5 minutes the proposals.
Yeah, no, I'm fine for doing it from here, Ms. Chairman.
Excuse me, is there a motion and a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please, Leader Camper, proceed.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members, I'm looking at Rule 19. Well, let's start with, Rule 19. Transgression of rules by members. We just spent a lot of time on with the previous sponsor talking about this transgression thing, and during session and in our special session, there was a lot of, I think, lack of understanding, Mr. Chairman, on why people was ruled out of order.
Madam Leader, I apologize. I apologize for interrupting
That's
you,
okay.
and this won't go towards your time. Members, as a reminder, I know we've been out of session a few months. If you would like to record yourself as a no on the previous vote, please do so at this
Yeah,
time.
she got it.
All right. Just wanted to make sure. Thank
Okay,
you and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it was a lot of confusion on what was out of order, and people were not understanding why they were called out of order. And oftentimes members was voting to rule someone out of order, but didn't understand why the person was ruled out of order. And others, was just making a decision based on what they believe was true. So what this would do is if a member is ruled out of order, particularly talking about this second time, then the person get to be given an explanation and inform what was the transgression in particular that the person is being ruled out of order on. Because sometimes it's a lot happening on that floor. And you're like, well, what did I do? I mean, what did the member do? And so I think the speaker should explain it to the member. This is why, especially if we say someone is off topic. How was I off topic? I don't understand. I'm trying to explain my point. So what this would do is say that the member who's called out of order must be permitted to have a response from the speaker as to why they were called out of order, and then given a chance to have basically a conversation around it. That's 19.
Madam Leader, if you don't mind, if you can describe the amendment on Rule 21 as well, please.
Okay, 21. Rule 21 for many years, Mr. Chairman and members, was limited to 15 minutes on a bill on the floor. You have to, dialoguing back and forth. And then we changed it to 5. And I had a problem with changing it to 5 because I thought it kind of limited debate and discussion, conversation. A person will explain their bill and member that, have a question. And with this 5-minute rule, the question that was asked, but then the person answered, took up the rest of the 5 minutes. And we changed the rule again to say, okay, you get this minute. And so we did a lot of things around it. So what I am proposing with this rule is to change it from 5 to 10 so that we can have good comprehensive dialogue back and forth on these bills. And a person don't feel like, oh my God, I got to spend my whole 5 minutes talking about this because I'm not going to get a chance anymore. I think we have an opportunity to have good conversation, dialogue about the bills that's about to impact people's life. And so limiting the time is just a constant problem for me. Forgive me, Mr. Speaker. He said hello.
Madam Leader, if you need to take that, the rest of us can just hang out for a
I
few.
don't need to take that.
Go right ahead.
I meant to have it on silent.
That's okay. It happens to all of us.
That's the other.
Go ahead.
That's it. We want to increase from 5 to 10 minutes on the debate on the floor.
All right.
Those are the two.
Members, do we have any questions? Those are pretty straightforward. No, we have no questions. We'll be voting on the submission by Leader Camper to amend Rules 19 and 21. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The noes have it. I'm sorry, that one fails. And again, if you would like to be recorded, the prevailing vote was a no on that bill. If you'd like to be recorded as a yes, please let the clerk know.
Record us a yes.
I anticipated Leader Camper might be recorded as a yes there. So, and Representative Shaw as well. All right. I know that Chairman Clemens has been waiting patiently in the back of the room. You are next, sir, as the next most senior and presiding member of leadership in the Democratic Caucus. And Representative Clemens, I think you were here at the beginning, but if you can, just in 5 minutes, please describe to us the rules presentation that you have. Just go ahead and go through all of them. That's all right with you, sir. Please proceed.
Every amendment that was submitted.
Just the ones by you, if you don't mind. The other members are here to present theirs.
Right. That's what I intended. Thank you. Well, let me first say how excited I am to see your smiling faces this year. Well, most of you. I joke. So I've got amendment 1 here. My first amendment is to create a newly numbered section, and it would state, once formally adopted by the House of Representatives, there shall be no consideration of or a final vote of the House on any proposed amendment or amendments to these rules prior to the 3rd week of January in an evenly numbered year. This amendment was submitted to me by a member of my caucus for the intention of giving the public and the members of the House an fair opportunity to review any proposed rule amendments to the standing House amendments before the House that were adopted in the previous year. Amendment 2 is a rule change to Rule 6, and it doesn't delete any language from the provision which is titled Speaker to Appoint Committees. It merely adds a sentence that says, every duly elected member of the House shall be appointed to one or more standing committees, including but not limited to those elected by a popular vote or a local governing body to serve less than a full term. The intention there is, as we have seen, I think recently this current speaker has had it his practice not to appoint members who were elected in a special election or appointed by a local governing body to a standing committee. He has done that evenly across the board, across the aisle. But I believe that if someone is elected to serve in this body, they're people who elected them fairly and rightfully deserve that they have the opportunity to speak up at every stage of the process, equally to the other members who are duly elected to this body as well. Therefore, I think they should be able to serve on standing committees as every other member. My third amendment, which addresses Rule 21, which is titled Time Limits of Debate, makes 2 small changes. This, again, addresses time limits of debate, which has been thoroughly debated here today. This would increase the time limit for each member to 15 minutes, and it deletes the word or decrease. There's a sentence in here that says a majority of the members present may increase or decrease the limitations of time herein set out for debate on a particular bill, resolution, or motion. I would like to remove the ability of the body to vote to decrease any member's time to discuss a piece of legislation. That 15 minutes, I think, as I said, has been discussed thoroughly here today. But again, all of us were elected by over 70,000 people in the state of Tennessee. Their members have the right to stand up and speak on any given bill or piece of legislation or resolution before the House. Whether or not they choose to do so on every bill is up to them. Whether or not they choose to consume that entire 15 minutes is up to them. But we are all sent here for a purpose, and that is to debate legislation thoroughly and thoughtfully. And I would ask that that time limit be increased to 15 minutes. My fourth amendment is a newly numbered subsection to Rule 83, which governs the rules of committees. And it would add the new language, no chair of any committee shall limit or prohibit A, any member of the general public's peaceful attendance of any committee hearing, or B, any member of the general public's ability to silently hold or display a sign or placard in a committee hearing. I think every member of the general public should recognize, as we often say in this body, that this is the people's house. If they choose to come and peacefully, silently hold a sign in a committee hearing to express their personal viewpoint, as they have the right and liberty to do in this country and in this state, they should be allowed to do so without limitation, as long as they're not disrupting business. Mr. Chairman, those are my 4 suggested amendments that I've submitted to your office in a timely manner, and I'd ask that they be adopted.
And Chairman Clemens, I will, there's a motion and a second, and I should have asked for that at the beginning. Sorry, again, I'm a little rusty, but I will say you finished in less time than Representative Garrett, so you may brag about that to him later. And thank you for being very efficient, sir. I will state just on the Amendment 4 there, and I know there's been some question about this. I received an email from someone about this a couple of days ago. The rules that we're running in the special session do not carry over to the 113th. And I know you know this, Chairman, but I'm going to say it just publicly. There was a prohibition on signs that was passed in the special session that is not a part of the 113th General Assembly's rules. There are signs in this room now. Everyone has been respectful. They've held them down. Nobody's held it up above so other people can't see. There's no one that's been disruptive or anything of that nature. And so that is obviously permitted. There is no prohibition against signs. Now, there is, as far as access into the building, there is a policy that does not allow folks to bring in banners or large billboards or something of that nature. It is limited to a letter size, which every sign I see in the audience today is a letter size sign. And so someone wouldn't be able to come in through security with a full size, cutout of their favorite person or whomever. I mean, you can't bring like a large sign in like that or a billboard or something else. That happened a few years ago. Someone wanted to do that. So, I mean, it's just letter size signs like these. There's no prohibition against. Do we have additional questions for the chairman?
May I respond to that?
Yes, absolutely, Chairman.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate this committee's willingness to allow those signs. Unfortunately, in the past, we have seen discretion allotted to the chairman of the respective committees, and chairmen are given wide discretion to enact their own rules. And today you have allowed signs in this committee, as I believe you should. I would like to remove that discretion. I would like it to be in the permanent rules to remove that discretion from any committee chairman, subcommittee chairman, just to make sure that we have that freedom of expression and speech clearly delineated within our permanent rules of order. Take that discretion away from the committee chairman for whatever reason. And of course, that would then be, if that was adopted, it would then be subject to the rules of admission to the body. I mean, with regard to size that you mentioned. So I don't think there is any contradiction there, or I don't think those are adverse to each other.
And thank you, Chairman. And my only clarification was just so folks know that we are under the 113th rules, and other than the, again, policies of the building, there's nothing in there that prohibits that. So additional questions for the chairman? All right, seeing none, we'll be voting on this rule submission. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The nays have it. So unfortunately, that proposal fails, or those proposals fail. If you would like to be recorded as a yes, please let the clerk know. Thank you, Chairman.
And Mr. Chairman, clarification, we're voting on the entire slate as opposed to each individual amendment.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, next up, I have Chairman Todd for what I believe is just, this one is just one submission under Rule 19. And is there a motion or a second? Is there a second? Second. All right, Chairman,
I wanted to correct that. These are three separate proposals.
Are they all under Rule 19?
They're all under Rule 19.
Yes, so members, you should have this in front of you. This is a change to Rule 19. It is three separate proposals. And Chairman, you will have 5 minutes to describe these. Please
Thank-
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first is a rule change we come in about within the first sentence. If a member transgresses the rules, the speaker and/or committee chair shall rule the member out of order. So this includes and clarifies that a committee chairman is in the same position in that committee setting to rule a member out of order. The second is upon second or subsequent transgression, the speaker and/or committee chair shall ask the transgressing member to leave the floor or committee room for the remainder of the legislative day. And again, this is after the things that have already been adopted here, all the different warnings and procedures that you would go through as a speaker or the chair. This clarifies that the chairman of committee can do the same thing. And then the speaker has the ability to ask that member to leave for the rest of the legislative day. The third item, if on subsequent legislative days, the member continues to transgress the rules, such member shall be liable to censure of the House. Censure by the House to be decided by majority vote, and the range of punishment to be up to and including the following: removal from assigned committees, limited or no access to parking garage, member elevator, and any other non-public access to Cordell Hull building. So this just clarifies what censure would involve if that were voted on by the majority.
Well described, Chairman, and you were well under the 5-minute time limit, so best of my knowledge. So do we have any questions for Chairman Todd on this particular rule submission? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be a little more specific about your first rule change in Rule 19. I think I understood it, but I'm not sure. Just if you could repeat that.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll read it as it would appear in Rule 19 as Rule 19 currently is, and I know it's been amended here already in the first presentation. But reading with the current language, transgression of rules by member. Any member who, in speaking or otherwise, transgresses the rules of the House, the Speaker, and this is where you would insert, or committee chair shall, and then it goes on with the language that's already there, or any other member may call such transgressing member to order. So that's what it just inserts, or committee chair shall.
Oh, hang on, just say it if we can. Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize.
Oh, no need, please, Representative Shaw.
I was a little rusty.
We all are, sir. Go right ahead.
Any other member, I understand the speaker or the committee chair or any other member of that committee.
Chairman Todd.
Those words are already in Rule 19. Any other member may.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you. I think I understand it.
All right, additional questions for Chairman Todd? All right, seeing none, members will be voting on this submission. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Chairman, unfortunately, I think the nays have it. If you'd like to be recorded as a yes, please see the clerk. All right, I have up next Representative Ritchie for one submission under Rule number 83. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second. All right, Representative Ritchie, if you can, just describe what you would like to do with this particular piece of legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Rule number 83, I ran a campaign based on transparency and accountability. And one thing that drove me crazy when I was trying to see what was happening down here at Cordell Hall was I could not see how the votes were cast in committees and in subcommittees. So I get down here and I made a motion last year to try to change this to where we would have roll call votes and not the voice votes, because I don't know about you, but I wear hearing aids and I don't have the best ears on the planet, as well as I'm sure everybody else up here might have some type of hearing issues as well from everything that we listen to. I know that the votes are extremely important and that needs to be spot on. An example I'll share with you is as we go through different caucus meetings and we're electing a secretary or we're electing a treasurer or assistant majority leader, we pass out a piece of paper and we mark down who we want to be on that. Then we bring it back and we've got to diligently count that to make sure that everything adds up. And that's just for a caucus. When it comes to 7 million Tennesseans, we're okay with listening to somebody's ear and who they think is better, or the yays were more or the no's were more. So this motion right here would end up just allowing or forcing it to where we would have roll call votes in each committee and subcommittee other than calendar and rules, because of the amount of bills going through there and how many people sit on there. That is all this bill does, is puts roll call votes in committees and in subcommittees minus calendar and rules.
And Representative Ritchie, I know you and I have talked about this in months past, but I did happen to go ahead and look up the votes on House Bill 405. I know that's a bill that you had last year where there was a voice vote. And I found it interesting that the voice votes are recorded on the website. It indicates the yeses and the nos on who voted that way. But in the Senate, which has a roll call vote, it says votes for Senate Bill 452 by the Senate are not available. So the House is transparent on their voting, and any member can ask for a roll call vote. So I know we've talked about this before, but there is a process to do this. When you step up to the podium, ask for a roll call vote if you want a roll call vote. By the way, I will tell you in the discretion of the chair, we are going to take a roll call vote on this today. I thought that would be appropriate. But at the same time, we have done voice votes and everything else. And as you see me very clearly say to those that wish to be recorded one way or the other, they can do so. Otherwise, they are recorded as the vote was cast. So I know there's much more that we can go through on this, but I did just want to emphasize that several of us have mentioned we're rusty. We've been out for months. There is also a process to challenge the ruling of the chair. There are other processes so that a roll call vote can be made if necessary. On the vast majority of bills that come through, it's simply not. But at the same time, I just want to bring that up for clarification that there are procedures out there for this. This procedure would obviously make it for all bills. With that, members, do we have questions for? Yes, Chairman Farmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Lambert. I appreciate that. Just to be clear, I've gotten a few calls from some of my constituents on this one here. And this may be to the chair or the parliamentarian, just to be very clear, every vote that's taken by a full committee or subcommittee, every vote that's taken, the public has the ability to go online and see the name of the person who voted yes, and the name of the member that voted yes, and the name of the member that voted no. Is that correct?
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, just a side conversation, parliamentarian, we can go out of session if we need to, but the way it's recorded is that the members of the committee are obviously online, and the presiding member, so if it will say, if the vote was a yes and the bill was successful, then it indicates that it was successful, and then it will indicate those that asked to be recorded as a no. And so it indicates on there. So it literally, you look at the number of the members of the committee and you look at the number of no's, and it's a yes and a no, it's right there.
So Mr. Chair, if say my constituents wanted to see how I voted on a bill and hold me accountable to what I've told my constituents I'm going to do here in Nashville, they have the ability to see that.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, again, I just as an example, looked one up before we got in here because I too received an email from a good friend of mine. It just said, oh, on this bill, how do I find the votes? And you go to the capital.tn.gov website, which if you're watching online now, you're already on that website, put in the bill number, and then over on the side, there's a drop-down menu and it will have votes. But I did find it was interesting just on that particular vote that the House votes were recorded, but the Senate was not. I'm not casting aspersions on the Senate. I just found it interesting that it actually was recorded here, but not there. We've done a lot of speaking up here on this. I want to go back to Representative Ritchie. There may be something you would like to add or not. That's entirely your call, but we did some back and forth here. But as a sponsor of the rule, you've listened to some of this. Do you have anything additional that you would like to add, sir?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, as it stands right now, if you go onto the website, as you're alluding to, it says the prevailing votes or the prevailing ayes or the prevailing nays. You have to go to the clerk or signal to have it marked one way or the other. So procedurally, yes, it can be in there, but that does not happen. And whenever somebody goes out on the campaign trail, when we gavel out in April, there's going to be a lot of members that walk around Cordell Hall that are going to be going back to their district saying, well, I supported that, yet they didn't vote in favor of it, or they did vote in favor of something that their district or their community that did not want them. This is so simple. They've got a piece of paper up there with every representative's name on it to go through and to be able to have that. Other solutions that could end up taking place is there is a budget where we could put the voting blocks inside of here. That goes up to the speaker. There's a whole other thing there. This is the smallest, easiest thing to bring 100% transparency to where every member's vote is put down, whether it's a yes, no, present not voting, or if they're just absent, they're not there. So that's why I'm presenting this forward. It's a play on words when you end up looking at, it's prevailing votes or prevailing ayes or prevailing noes, but people go back into their districts and they speak out of both sides of their mouth, depending on who it is that they're talking to. And I'm not saying of the current members, but previously, I'm not going to say a name, I witnessed an individual that was a member down here that's no longer here would talk to one group and say one thing and talk to another group on the exact same topic and say something completely different. And if we had something in place to where they were voting on that particular legislation, to where it wasn't prevailing ayes or prevailing noes, then that completely goes away. So that's why I brought this forward.
All right, Representative Ritchie, thank you. That's very well explained. And Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not indicating how I'm going to vote on this, but in his defense, just last week, I did have a person to walk up to me and to say that you can't find how members voted on the website. However, every time I've gone on there, I've been able to find it. Now, I will say that, but I did have a person and I asked that question and it said, well, you just can't find it. And I don't know exactly what that meant, but I do want to say that I have heard that one time. Now, how I'm going to vote on this may be different, but I do want to make that point.
Thank you, Representative Shaw. And again, for those that are watching that are here, I mean, you go to the website, you pull up the bill. There are two drop-down tabs on the right-hand side. The top one gives a menu of different options. The one down below that has a secondary menu, and you hit the little button that says votes, and it has the votes that were cast there. Representative Ritchie.
The only other thing, when you go there and you click on that, it does say the prevailing ayes, prevailing noes. If somebody wasn't there, it doesn't have an attendance log on that bill. This would take care of that. So you could be minus or absent. You've got something else going on and you're not in there when a bill's being taken up. If it passes and moves forward and you're not present to be able to be accounted as a no, the prevailing yeses. So in that same conversation, you would be marked as a yes on there, because if that was the prevailing way, or if it failed and you supported it, but you had stepped out for whatever reason, you would be marked. This is so simple. I don't know why somebody would not want their votes accounted for. I don't want a bill going forward. If I'm running a piece of legislation and it's not up to the merits of what the body thinks should move forward, it shouldn't move forward. And if it is good enough, then it should move forward. And everybody sitting up on the dais should have the courage and the responsibility to be able to put their name next to a yes or a no and not have it hidden behind a prevailing yes or a prevailing no.
Representative Ritchie, I don't think there's anyone up here that lacks courage. So with all due respect to the presenter, let's tone that down just a hair, okay? Every vote is recorded. I know you wish it to be recorded in a different way, but let's not cast aspersions on the committee here, okay? Can we agree on that, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't saying it specifically to anybody. I'm just saying that as we come down here to represent our districts, we should have the courage and responsibility to be able to put our name next to a yes or a no and not have it kind of hidden, kind of sort of in a prevailing yes or a no. That's all I was saying. I wasn't calling anybody specifically on anything.
Representative Ritchie, that's why I wanted to give you a chance just to clarify. I took a second there and I thought, well, surely he's not trying to do that.
Yeah.
So thank you. Questions? Yes, Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and maybe to the sponsor. And I too have received some calls about this particular rule change. But, you know, if I'm sitting here and we're debating a bill and I don't open my mouth when it's time to vote, whether I open it or not, if I don't turn around to the clerk and say, hey, mark me as a yes or mark me as a no, I voted, because at that point I'm on the prevailing side. And so that's what I've told my constituents. If my name is on the prevailing side, I voted yes, whether I open my mouth or not, unless I turn around and tell that clerk, mark me as a no. So I think we have to remember that there's accountability there, and maybe we should do a little better job as legislators making sure that we get our constituents under the same understanding. I don't know, you know, if we were to do a roll call vote on every single bill, which I don't have a problem with transparency. That's why I come down here, and if somebody asks me how do I vote, I'll tell them. And maybe one thing that, you know, we could consider, is there some way to, you know, if you have to step out and, you know, is there a way to say, hey, you know, under that bill, when it shows votes, it shows absence, or, you know, present not voting. Maybe that can be listed as well. But as far as, I think there needs to be an understanding, even if you sit here and you do not say a word and a vote is taken, you voted. One way or the other, you voted, because if you don't say anything, you're on the prevailing side. If you turn around and say, hey, mark me a no, you voted no. So I just want to make sure that's clear, especially back to my constituents back home. It's very transparent, whether we like it or not. It is transparent because our votes are being taken. And so I that's all I want to say, and make sure the folks back home certainly know where I'm coming from. And I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Nix, thank you. And again, as a reminder to members, if you do step out of the room and you're in a committee, you should really let the chairman know. I mean, if you had stepped out today, I would appreciate you letting me know. And then if we had cast a vote, the procedure, which, and again, thank you for bringing this point up, because it's a good reminder to all of us that if this passes, obviously it will change the procedure, but under the current procedure, members should do that. I mean, if they step out of a room, they absolutely should let the chairman know that they are not present in that room for when the voice vote is called. In a roll call, it's pretty obvious normally because that person is not there to vote. So additional questions for the sponsor of this amendment? It's good debate. Nope. And sponsor, do you have anything else to add?
No, the only thing that I would end up adding, what would end up kind of resolving the concern that the hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people that I've spoken with that want this is if on the bills when it's passed, I understand the prevailing ayes or the prevailing nays is what ended up taking place, but there's no attendance or who was in that prevailing aye or prevailing no that's on there. That's not right now anywhere on the website. If that was there, then 100%, it's 100% transparent, like a representative from East Tennessee stated. But we don't know who was there voting on a bill to begin with when it's coming through these committees, and all it says is the prevailing aye. So I'm not saying that there's not that transparency from that part, but if you don't know who's there, you don't know how they voted. And that's all I say. So thank you.
Representative Ritchie, thank you. And I was just talking with the clerk. I mean, I think that's a very valid point that, I mean, it's something that definitely should be. We take attendance on the floor. We take attendance in committees. They call the roll at the beginning, so it is on the video. But if there's some way that that could be added to the website, I personally, think that's a good idea. It's not necessarily in this rule. Obviously, if your rule passes, it will resolve this in a different way. But that suggestion I've at least mentioned to the clerk, and I think it's something that should be discussed. Additional questions? All right, seeing none, we'll be voting on this particular rule. It's an amendment to Rule 83 by Representative Ritchie. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. Remember, the nays have it. Oh, and you know what? I apologize. All right, so I said we were going to take a roll call vote on that. Nope, Representative Ritchie, come back up here. Unfortunately, the chair failed to detect or do y'all want me to go through this or not? All right, he said he doesn't want it. I was going to do a roll call vote. I apologize. Actually was. It was pretty clear the nays had it, sir. So Representative Ritchie, I owe you a roll call vote sometime or another. I should have taken one there. Yes. If you wish to record yourself as a yes, though the chair did not hear any yeses, please let the clerk know. All right. Representative Jones, thank you for waiting patiently today. You have several submissions here under several different rules. There is a motion and a second. And if you can and I know you've been here again waiting patiently as other members and you've seen kind of the process we're going through, feel free to go ahead and describe these rules changes. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And before I proceed, I would like to request a roll call vote on this. Thank you.
Absolutely well done. And that is the process. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I have 17 amendments, starting with rule number 2. Strike the phrase "and may speak to points of order in preference to other members," and add, "but may not silence or otherwise bar members from speaking" in line 2. The rule should now read in full: should a member find the speaker's conduct or behavior to violate House order and decorum, the member may immediately raise a point of order, at which time the Speaker pro tempore will preside and call for a vote requiring a simple majority of assembled legislators to decide if the Speaker's actions constitute a violation. Rule number 4, currently the Speaker has the sole authority to order the gallery and the lobby of the Capitol cleared. This would change that to require a supermajority vote of the legislators present and assembled. Rule number 6, line 1 shall be amended to read: the Speaker shall appoint all committee chairs and vice chairs, but committee membership shall be determined by leadership of each party, with apportionment being based on chamber distribution. The minority leader may appoint a ranking member on each committee, subcommittee, or special committee. This is currently how it works in Congress. The Speaker does not have the sole authority to appoint members to a committee, but the minority party and majority party get to appoint which members from their party are sitting on a committee. And it's a fair process to ensure that the Speaker cannot retaliate against members and strip their committees arbitrarily with the sole authority. Rule number 19, Rule number 10 shall read: the Speaker shall appoint such House employees, except those who work for individual members or on behalf of respective caucuses. Each member shall be responsible for all hiring decisions in their respective offices. Right now, the Speaker has the sole authority to hire every staff member in the House. He already hires the clerk, the ethics counsel, the sergeant at arms, who are all beholden to him. But the people in our office, we should have the sole authority to hire. The Speaker should not be able to hire my legislative assistant or fire my legislative assistant, because that is somebody who works for my office, and the Speaker should not have that sole authority authority in a democracy. Rule number 19 should be stricken in its entirety from the House Permanent Rules of Order. And it should be replaced with the following language. Any member who, in speaking or otherwise, transgresses the rules of the House, the Speaker shall or any other member may call such transgressing member to order, in which case the member so called to order may immediately strike their words from the record, withdraw their question or statement, or recant such a statement, or may otherwise continue with the objection of the Speaker or any other member submitted to the record. This is so that we don't silence a member. There is still a process that a member can have their comments stricken from the record if they are out of order. Rule number 21, we heard this before from another member, shall increase the speaking time for debate to 15 minutes. Rule number 29, the rule shall be amended to lower the threshold from 5 members to 2 members. Rule 30, a clause shall be included at the end of the rule stating members may decide the form and style they would like to submit their dissents to the journal and retain all rights and privileges as members over their own speech and written words. There is some confusion over the process of submitting dissents to the journal. I went back and forth with the clerk and the ethics council here. And we finally found a process, but it's not in our rules to clarify how do we submit our dissents to the journal in a way that is acceptable to ensure that they're included in the House Journal as the official record for the House. Rule number 32 shall be amended to lower the threshold from 5 to 2. Rule number 35, members shall Rule number 35, the clause, members shall not enter any meeting of the House, its committee, or its subcommittee joint conventions, or with any props or personal displays of any kind that may be used as a visual aid for advocacy of or opposition to any legislative or political message whatsoever shall be stricken from the rule. Right now, if you pay attention to Congress, when members present a bill on the floor, they can have a display to show what they're talking about. I believe some members of your party, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, brought props and display boards to the committee rooms to kind of explain what was happening in the congressional proceedings. Visual aids may make things more accessible to members of the public. If we are able to present something behind us, a graph chart or other helpful information, it may be helpful as we see is used in Congress. Rule number 74, I think this is a very important rule. Right now, members of the legislature are able to vote on legislation that they have a financial interest in. As long as they disclose that to the ethics process. This would prohibit members from voting on any bill that they have a financial benefit from. This is to avoid corruption. This is to avoid any type of appearance of impropriety. And so this would strike the provision that allows members to vote on bills that they have a financial interest in or conflict of interest in, as long as they disclose and say that you cannot vote on legislation that you're going to financially benefit from. This is in the interest of the people of Tennessee. Finally, Rule 85 shall be stricken from the Tennessee House of Representatives Permanent Rules of Order. That's the rule requiring any caucuses to be formed to have the approval of the Speaker, the Majority Leader, and Minority Leader. If somebody wants to form a caucus, like we want to form a caucus around ending gun violence, we should have that authority as members to, if we say we have 5 members who want to create an anti-gun violence caucus, we should be able to do that. And so it should be changed. Rule 85 would now say that caucuses may be formed by 3 or more members who consent to a caucus formation. Caucuses are not limited in their scope. It may be partisan or nonpartisan. Members within the caucus may set their own rules and governing functions, including leadership structure and budget. Rule 86 is a law.
Representative Jones, take a breath for just a second. We went 5 minutes, but you've only got a couple more. I'm going to let you go ahead and finish, but I don't want you to feel like you have to rush through it too bad. If that was 5, but go ahead and finish the rest of them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have 2 more. I was trying to get through all of these. Rule number 86 would be a new amendment to the rules. It would state that no firearms may be permitted in House committee rooms. I think this is in the safety of members of the committees as well as members of the public if we prohibit firearms from our committee rooms, which can be seen as threatening to members. If somebody comes in here with firearms, that is going to make people uncomfortable and feel unsafe. You have a security process, you have troopers. We don't need members of the public coming in here with firearms. And finally, Rule 87, nothing in these rules may be used to prohibit or otherwise prevent 8x11 paper signs or other small signage from being used by members of the public in the committee rooms or House galleries. As the chairman has clarified, that is going to be the practice here, but I think it's important that going forward that we do have this in some written down policy to hold each of us accountable to allowing members of the public to exercise their right to inform their legislators of their concerns and grievances.
Thank you, Representative Jones. And it was about 6 minutes, but you had a lot of stuff to go through there, so that's still pretty close.
Thank you.
Questions for the presenter on these? And again, on any one of these rules, they're just like Representative Garrett earlier, there are a number of here to go through. So I know Leader Camper was very inquisitive on the other package. So do we have any questions from anybody on this one? There is a lot here to cover. Leader Camper.
Thank you. You called my name, but I did have a question. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Representative, for your recommendations and your rules. I'm glad you clarified for me on the firearms. You weren't speaking of law enforcement, troopers and all of that, just members,
Public.
individuals in the public. So thank you for that. Secondly, on your rule number 30, could you talk a little bit more about 30 in terms of information posted in the journal? Was there some confusion, concern around some information that was either requested to be, could you talk a little bit more about that? This is the first time I'm hearing some kind of concerns around this particular rule.
Leader Camper, now that
Sir.
we are down to the last two rules
Oh, yeah.
presenters, Representative Grills has joined us, and if we can, please record him as present. Thank you. I know you had some actual business to attend to this morning, but thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Shirley.
Representative Jones, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, and thank you, Leader Camper. Currently, under Article 2, Section 27 of the state constitution, it states that any member of the legislature may dissent from and protest against any legislation that they find injurious to the people, and to have their dissents recorded in the Journal of the House. During this past regular session, my office submitted about 15 points of concern, dissents to the House clerk, which we had to kind of go back and forth to ensure that they were submitted and accepted in the journal. It required, the clerk sent the ethics counsel to my office to try and explain to my legislative assistant the process, which was not written down in a clear fashion. These dissents are stating why a member votes against a piece of legislation. So, for example, the speaker does not call on you under the House procedure when you're trying to be heard about why you want to oppose legislation that's going to harm your constituents. You have the right under the state constitution to have it written down and included in the House journal. This has not been the practice for some time. I went up to look at the House library, and not many members exercise this authority, but it is a right that we have that these rules cannot undo. But these rules have sought to create parameters and create a process that can be arduous to members to ensure that their dissents are accepted in a timely and acceptable manner. And so this is to ensure that each member is able to exercise their state constitutional right to have their dissents recorded in the House journal. And to not allow the clerk to arbitrarily decide that they won't include your dissents because the deadline has passed, or they think that there's something else that needs to be added. And so this is just to ensure that we are able to exercise that right as members.
Okay, thank
Leader
you.
Camper, additional questions?
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that clarity. There was one other one that I had a question about. Oh, I think it was on your caucuses. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I'm inclined to agree with you around the caucuses. When there was a time where we had various different caucuses formed here, and the rule did change to say you had to, submit to the speaker and the leaders on a particular caucus. And with that came some kind of support from administration if you needed, maybe if you need legal advice with that caucus. So I agree with you that there's so many things and issues that's out there that like-minded people should be able to come together and caucus around, because you're just really talking about ideas and things that are impacting a particular segment of the community, or a particular idea, or particular legislation as it impacts people. So I agree with you on that particular rule. And you're saying 3 members or more, as long as they consent, your own rules. Were you expecting that that group would, in determining this budget and stuff like that, were you expecting that maybe these caucuses could also get some kind of support if they need from, legal, if they need some type of advice or research or something like that as well with these caucuses?
Representative Jones.
Thank you. I think that can be a part of it. I just think that, for example, even as we're increasing in diversity, we have a Black caucus. What if we have Hispanic members and they want to create a Hispanic caucus? They have to get the approval of the leaders and the speaker, which doesn't seem fair. They should just be able to create that caucus. Or if you have a caucus that, I know some of my members on the other side of the aisle, we talked about going hiking or talked about nature. So what if we had a conservation caucus we wanted to create, and then wanted to reach out to the research division of agriculture to figure out, what are some of the state parks that we should go to? Like, we should be able to create a caucus around points of common interest. They allow it at the congressional level. I don't know why this rule was put into place to restrict that, but I think it's also a way for us to build collegiality as colleagues. It's a way for us to see points of common interest and to create points of common, even with constituencies that may be similar. And so I think It's just something that's very basic, and I think that we should have that right. And I don't see any harm in allowing members to create caucuses without the permission of the speaker and leaders of both parties to approve of it unanimously, it says.
And Representative Jones, you must have been following along on what little social media I do. We love going to state parks. And so I think I've been to 30 something of them. And for anybody that's listening, for whatever it's worth, I recommend going to every one of them. There's one within just a stone's throw here. The Bicentennial Mall is a state park. So anyway, sorry, just kind of a tangent there, but that's something I hope we'd all agree on is getting out into our state parks. Additional questions, Representative Shaw.
And may I respond to you, Mr. Leader?
Absolutely. Yes, Representative Jones.
And with that example, thank you for opening the floor. So say you and I both like to hike together, and we have Representative Sherrill here who wants to go hike with us, and we say we want to create a conservation caucus. Oh, excuse me, not Representative Sherrill, Representative Faison.
It's been a little bit for all of us. It's okay. Go ahead. Representative Faison. Yes, sir.
And say we
Yes, sir.
wanted to create a hiking caucus. Under the current rules, we have to get the speaker's permission to do that. And say Leader Camper says, "Oh, I don't like hiking." So if Leader Camper says she doesn't want it, then we can't create a hiking caucus. It just doesn't make any sense. And so I think that should be stricken. And so if we want to create these type of caucuses, we should have that authority as colleagues to do that without having some oversight from leadership. If we want to do this as colleagues and as friends going forward. And so I think this is a very basic change that we could consider. And so I just wanted to offer that.
Thank you, Representative Jones. Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Sponsor, you may not be able to answer this. I might have to refer to you, Mr. Chairman. What is the penalty for me to carry? Because the sign says no firearms on the floor. So what is the penalty if I'm caught with the firearm on the floor as a state legislator?
That's probably going to be a question for law enforcement. I will say it's a prohibited area. The Court Hill building does allow firearms for those that are legally allowed to have them. The Capitol does not. And I mean, it's a prohibited area. I'm certain there's some sort of a penalty. I will tell you that both members of the public and members of the legislature should respect all rules and regulations, regardless of whether or not there's any kind of a criminal penalty. But there are signs marking where you are not prohibited or you are not allowed to have firearms. Give me just a moment. Yeah, again, that would be a question probably for the Department of Safety or the Highway Patrol as to whether or not there's a criminal penalty. And at the end of the day, here in Nashville would probably be up to the district attorney as to whether or not there would be any kind of criminal penalty if someone was carrying in an area that they're prohibited from. Representative Shaw.
Thank you for that. I do know that, of course, I have personally seen members be armed on the floor. So I just wondered if there was a penalty or we had some exception to the rule or something of that sort. But I, without calling any names, bearing any blames, I have actually seen members with them. So I just wondered, that's come up a few times, and I'd really like to get some clarification on that.
We can definitely get that to you at some juncture. Again, this rule submission, I think, would clarify that for some instances. But I will reach out to some folks and see if I can get an answer to that question. All right, additional questions? All right, we will be doing a roll call vote on this as the member has requested.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you. In my initial statement requesting a roll call vote, I would like to request a roll call vote on each provision since these are multiple provisions. And so because one, for example, the caucus one, perhaps members of this committee will consider, it seemed like Leader Lamberth was in agreement if you would consider doing them one by one, or if I could pull the ones I wanted to vote as single issues.
So Representative Jones, they've been submitted as a package. There's probably a mechanism to do that. It's at the will of the committee. If someone wants to make a motion to, I think, divide the question would be the appropriate motion to make.
The only two.
Sorry, Representative Jones, go ahead.
The only two I'd like to pull, just because I kind of saw a few heads nod on this committee, is to the provision prohibiting firearms in committee rooms. I would like to pull that one as a standalone vote, prohibiting firearms in committee rooms. And the other one I would like to pull is the one about forming caucuses. If those can be voted on as singular issues, I would hope that members of this committee will consider them and deliberate on those appropriately.
Representative Jones, thank you. As of right now, we are voting on these as a package, unless there's a later Camper.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we take up those two separate from the packet.
All right, and let me check with the
Divide
parliamentarian.
question. Divide the
See,
question.
this is why we would approach the parliamentarian and discuss this so we can get the question and the answer, but that's not the procedure yet. Give us just a moment. All right, members, so any member of this committee, as a matter of right, may divide the question. It is not a motion that we would debate or actually vote on. So the sponsor has requested that the question be divided as to those two. So we would vote in a package on the rest of them and then vote on those two separately in a roll call vote. Leader Camper has made a motion to divide the question as to those two issues. Leader Camper, have I summarized that well? Yes, all right. And to the sponsor, sufficient for you, sir?
Thank you.
All right. So members, if it's fine, then what we'll do is we will be voting on a package, first and foremost, on all of these rules except Rule 86, and excuse me, Representative Jones, which was the other one? Or I should go to Leader Camper, I apologize, who actually made the motion to divide the question. Is it Rule 86 and
85.
85? All right, I heard an 85, and so Leader Camper, is that accurate? All right, so she's made a motion to divide the question on Rules 85 and 86. As to the remaining portion of the rules, you'll be voting on those rules right now. We'll be doing a roll call vote. A vote of yes or yay will be in favor of these rules being put into the entire package for this committee's submission to the floor. A vote of no would be for them to not. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Representatives Camper. Darby. Sorry, Camper votes aye. Darby votes no. Faison. Faison votes no. Farmer. Farmer votes no. Grills. Grills votes no. Hicks. Hicks votes no. Jernigan. Johnson. Johnson votes no. Shaw.
No.
Shaw votes no. Whitson. Whitson votes no. Chairman Lamberth.
No.
Mr. Chairman, you have 1 aye, 9 noes.
All right, thank you. And members, we will be now voting on standalone Rule 85. Again, same procedure. Madam Clerk, please take the roll. Members, just for clarification, it's Rule 85. That was formation of caucuses is this particular rule. Just as a reminder, I know we've gone through a lot of material. So, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Representatives Camper. Camper votes aye. Darby. Darby votes no. Faison. Faison votes aye. Farmer. Farmer votes no. Grills. Grills votes aye. Hicks. Hicks votes no. Jernigan. Johnson. Johnson votes no. Shaw. Shaw votes aye. Whitson. Whitson votes no. Chairman Lamberth.
No.
Lamberth votes no. Mr. Chairman, you have 4 ayes, 6 noes.
All right, members, we have one rule submission left, and then we have another presenter after this. Rule 86, the firearms policy question that Representative Jones brought before us. It'll be a roll call vote. And again, yes is a vote to make this a part of the package that this committee has voted on to send to the floor, and a no would be for it not to be. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Representatives Camper. Camper votes aye. Darby. Darby votes no. Faison. Faison votes no. Farmer. Farmer votes no. Grills. Grills votes no. Hicks. Hicks votes no. Jernigan. Johnson. Johnson votes no. Shaw.
No.
Shaw votes no. Whitson. Whitson votes aye. Chairman Lamberth.
No.
Lamberth votes no. Mr. Chairman, you have two ayes, 8 noes.
Representative Jones, thank you for your presentations today, and committee members, thank you for the
Thank you,
updates.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Jones. All right, I have one left. Representative Capley has been waiting patiently in the back of the room as he approaches the lectern. This was actually already submitted by Chairman Todd, and in conversation with you earlier, sir, will you be withdrawing this particular amendment for consideration today? All right, so members, that is withdrawn, our shortest presentation yet. Y'all can thank Representative Capley later. So with that, members, do we have anything else to handle today? Nope. All right. Well, I as well, Representative Clemens said this earlier, Chairman Clemens, it is really good to see you all and to see the public back in here in our committee rooms. I look forward to the next few months as we do the work of the people. With that, we stand adjourned.